On the day my husband and I were married, his childhood sweetheart threatened to take her own life. He responded coldly, "Let her make a scene. My lawful wife can only be Wan. Later, his childhood sweetheart truly died. My husband held my hand and comforted me, Wan. Her death had nothing to do with you." Believing his deep affection for me, I mobilized my entire family to propel him to power. Yet on the very day he ascended, he dismissed me with a divorce decree, then tortured me to death. Wan, if not for you, how could Su have died? Do you know how long I've waited for this day of vengeance? When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day of our wedding. I was tortured to death by Gu Fufeng. In the dead of winter, he had servants bind me with vines and dunk me again and again into a pool chilled by floating ice shards. My whole body shook, my bones numb. He stood on the shore, hands behind his back, a smile on his lips, yet his eyes were bloodshot. He was likely thinking of his long-dead beloved. Wan, are you cold? Su died in a winter like this too. How cold she must have been. How terrified. A woman like you deserves nothing better than drowning in a pig cage. Gu Fufeng waved his hand, signaling servants to push me into the pool. The icy water rose over my head, flooding my lungs. Amid the searing agony, my heart froze solid, inch by inch. After my death, my spirit did not vanish immediately. I saw that Gu Fufeng did not spare me even in death. He spread rumors of my fierce jealousy, claiming I drove his concubine to death, disrespected elders, and drowned myself in shame after he divorced me. By then, Gu Fufeng was a renowned virtuous official. People believed his words without question. So the eldest Miss Su was this kind of venomous woman. With such a tainted family, the other Su sisters were likely cut from the same cloth as their elder sister. Thus, the reputation of the Su family daughters plummeted. Second sister endured endless humiliation in her husband's home. Third sister had her betrothal annulled. And fourth sister faced insults at school. Father suffered a stroke from the shock and passed away soon after. Mother followed him shortly thereafter. 10 years ago, Gu Fufeng knelt before them with clear eyes. "I vow to marry Wan as my wife. For one lifetime. Until our hair turns white." My parents never imagined that the son-in-law they had propelled to power with their entire family's resources was actually a venomous snake. Filled with endless resentment, my soul dissipated. When I opened my eyes again, red candles burned brightly, wedding characters hung high, and cups clinked amidst the revelry. Eldest sister, stop spacing out. Your brother-in-law is looking at you. My second sister nudged me, and I glanced toward the seats across from us. Gu Fufeng, clad in a crimson groom's robe, was greeting guests. Spotting my gaze, he turned and offered me a smile. As if a fog lifted before my eyes, I realized I had been reborn on the very day of my wedding to Gu Fufeng. The wedding banquet was lavish, befitting the Su family, the wealthiest in Jiangnan, who certainly lacked neither silver nor splendor. As for Gu Fufeng, though born into humble origins, he was now the newly crowned top scholar of the imperial examinations. 6 months prior, while traveling to the capital for the exams, Gu Fufeng had passed by a silk shop and rescued me from being harassed by street thugs. To express my gratitude, I gifted him a pair of wolf hair brushes. Using these brushes during the examinations, he composed brilliant essays that earned the admiration of the Grand Secretary and the Emperor's personal selection as the top scholar. After his success, his first act was to return to Jiangnan to seek my hand in marriage. A match made in heaven, a scholar and a beauty, destined to meet under the golden autumn breeze and jade dew. Everyone considered our union a perfect union. Noticing my daze, Gu Fufeng approached and whispered softly, "What's wrong? Wan? Feeling unwell? Is it that time of the month? Shall I have someone prepare a bowl of red date and ginger soup for you?" He was always so considerate. Yet before Gu Fufeng could finish, the front hall erupted in commotion. A woman burst in. She wore pale robes, her frame delicate, tear-streaked marks on her pale face. Gu Fufeng's attendant gasped. "Cousin, what brings you here?" The woman addressed as cousin approached me, hastily picked up a teacup, and knelt before me. "Madam." The moment those words left her lips, the room erupted in commotion. I watched this pitifully vulnerable woman in silence. Her name was Su Yu, Gu Fufeng's cousin. In my past life, she had done the same, bursting into my wedding banquet with Gu Fufeng. She had offered me this very cup of tea, addressing me as madam. In our court, this was the ritual for presenting tea to a concubine. In my past life, Gu Fufeng had scolded Su Yu, ordered a servant to escort her out, and then told me, "My cousin lacks propriety. Please don't hold it against her." He then took my hand and led me before my parents, declaring he had no intention of taking a concubine and would devote himself solely to me. Though my parents were displeased that the betrothal banquet had been disrupted, seeing Gu Fufeng stand firmly by my side, they said no more. Later, Gu Fufeng and I were married, and the Su family poured all its resources into supporting him. When he needed to cultivate connections among the court officials, the Su family procured all manner of rare treasures and curios to help him pave his way in the imperial court and build his network. When His Majesty dispatched him to suppress bandits, my father funded him with substantial sums of silver. My younger brother even infiltrated the bandit camp, risking his life to serve as his informant. All this secured Gu Fufeng's steady rise through the ranks. The Su family never voiced a single complaint, for I was their kin. They believed that if Gu Fufeng prospered, so would I. The year Gu Fufeng was in theft as a marquis, Su died in a side courtyard of the Gu residence. Rumor had it she threw herself into a well in despair. Upon hearing the news, Gu Fufeng provided silver for her burial, not forgetting to reassure me, "Wan Wan, her death has nothing to do with you. Do not blame yourself." But in truth, Gu Fufeng deceived me. His words of exoneration were merely a mask of restraint. He still needed me and my family to aid him. Once he reached the pinnacle of power, the Su family became dispensable to him. He promptly had me locked in a pig cage and humiliated the entire Su clan with a divorce decree. Only then did I realize how deeply he had loved Su Yu. Now, Su Yu kneels before me, lowly and tearful, pleading her case. My cousin and I grew up together, betrothed since childhood. But later, my father was convicted and exiled, and the betrothal was annulled. Su knew she was unworthy of my cousin. The eldest Miss Su and my cousin were truly a perfect match. Yet Su never once considered marrying another man in her life. Therefore, she is willing to serve my cousin as a lowly concubine, begging the mistress to grant her this favor. Before she could finish, the surrounding guests erupted in an uproar. The Su family members all turned pale. Amid the silence, Gu Fufeng stepped forward. He snatched the teacup from Su Yu's hands and smashed it to pieces. Absurd. Shattered porcelain flew, cutting a bloody gash across Su Yu's face. She trembled in pain but bit her lip, uttering not a sound. Gu Fufeng shouted, "My family took you in out of pity for your orphan plight. What schemes are you hatching now? Never mind that our betrothal was but an empty jest among elders. Worthless from the start. Wan Wan has only just wed me, and here you are pressuring her at her own wedding feast. Utterly preposterous." With that, Gu Fufeng coldly ordered his servant, "The young mistress has lost her mind. Take her away." The servant obeyed, turning to Su Yu, "Come, Miss Cousin." Eyes lowered, tears streaming, Su Yu was led away, her spirit utterly broken. Gu Fufeng pulled me up and brought me before my family. Just as in my past life, he began promising how well he would treat me henceforth. I stood beside him, observing him coldly. His hand trembled slightly. While drinking, His gaze would drift involuntarily toward the doorway. Though he could see nothing. That was the direction Suyu had left. He was worried about her. Red candles burned. Like weeping tears. The guests dispersed, leaving only Gu Fufeng and me in the bridal chamber. He took my hand, Wan. I withdrew my hand without a flicker of emotion. The time should be near. Sure enough. Before Gu Fufeng could react, a servant shouted from outside, "Young master." "It's terrible." Gu Fufeng flew into a rage. "Tonight is our wedding night. What cannot wait until tomorrow?" The servant was gasping for breath. Clearly having sprinted all the way, the young lady. She drowned herself in the lake. I watched Gu Fufeng spring to his feet. Every muscle taut. She's dead? No. The servant gasped for breath. Fortunately, a passing old woman rescued her. But the young lady is still in a terrible state. Master. Perhaps you should go see her. I sat on the bed, watching Gu Fufeng without betraying a single emotion. His entire body trembled, clearly consumed by worry beyond measure. Yet within mere moments, he forced himself to calm down, adopting a cold, disgusted expression. Gu Fufeng said indifferently, "Tonight is my wedding night with Wan Wan. I cannot go see her. Let her make a scene if she wishes." I sighed inwardly. Well done, Gu Fufeng. Truly a man who gets things done. With that level of restraint and acting skill, it was no wonder I fell into his trap in my past life. But having lived this life again, I won't make the same mistake twice. Just as Gu Fufeng returned to the bedside, intending to continue our intimacy, I abruptly stood up. Where is my cousin? I'm going to check on her. Night had fallen, and the lakeside was bitterly cold. Gu Fufeng tried desperately to stop me all the way, but he couldn't hold me back. I reached the shore to find Suyu sitting there, soaked to the bone, looking utterly pitiful. Gu Fufeng clearly didn't want me to interact too much with Suyu, so he rushed ahead of me. How could you attempt such a reckless act? If you wish to die, that's your choice, but to burden Wan Wan with such distress on her wedding night? How could you bear that responsibility? Though his words were for my sake, his eyes were red with heartache. Suyu remained silent, only sobbing quietly. Gu Fufeng sighed deeply and came to my side. Wan Wan. She is family after all. I'll talk to her. You should go back first. Rest assured, I'll handle matters like this properly from now on. I won't trouble you with such things again. Seeing Gu Fufeng's tender and considerate demeanor, I smiled. All right. Then, please talk some sense into my cousin first. With that, I took the maid's hand and left. Though I said I was leaving, I took a detour and returned, hiding behind a lake rock. I listened quietly to their conversation. Gu Fufeng's voice carried both heartache and reproach. Didn't I tell you to wait for me back home? Why did you come here without permission? Suyu wept pitifully. Yuer missed her cousin so terribly. She traveled all the way to Jiangnan, and the moment she entered the city, she heard the news that her cousin was to marry the eldest daughter of the Su family. Yuer panicked and rushed into the wedding banquet in her distress. Cousin, do you no longer want Yuer? If you don't want me anymore, what am I supposed to do? Gu Fufeng embraced Suyu, his voice gentle. Silly Yuer. How could I ever abandon you? But I must marry Su Wan. You know, my father was stripped of his title by the emperor years ago. Our family has fallen into ruin, and all hope rests on me now. Though I've now passed the imperial examination as top scholar, I have no connections in court. A Su family daughter is my best option. Suyu looked bewildered. No matter how wealthy the Su family is, they're still just merchants. Merchants are lowly, but not the Sus. Gu Fufeng's voice grew solemn. When the Qiangrong invaded and the late emperor fled south, the head of the Su family funded substantial military provisions. The late emperor bestowed upon them the title of imperial merchants for generations. Moreover, the Su family's daughter was deeply in love with the crown prince at that time, meaning the most favored consort Su in the palace today is Su Wan's own aunt. With factional strife raging in the court now, aligning with either side invites obstruction from the other. Yet the Su family, based far in Jiangnan, commands respect from both factions. Do you understand? Marrying the princess would nearly grant me the title of a fifth-rank imperial son-in-law. Marrying Su Wan, however, could elevate me to marquis and chancellor. My heart turned to ice. I almost wanted to applaud Gu Fufeng. What a cunning scheme. Truly cunning. Rest assured. You are my lifelong love. The only one who stood by me through hardship. I would never make you a concubine. Once I reach the pinnacle of power, I will divorce Su Wan. You shall be my sole wife. I understand. I finally grasped everything that unfolded in my past life. When Su Yu died, Gu Fufeng had just been in theft as a marquis. His position was still precarious then, he couldn't cast me aside immediately. But Su Yu couldn't wait. So she had someone deliver news of her death to Gu Fufeng. True to form, he went mad. His hatred for me reached its peak. After years of bitter struggle, he tortured me to death. Then Su Yu had someone inform Gu Fufeng that the death report was false, she was still alive. Thus, after my death, this star-crossed couple was finally reunited. Even now, Gu Fufeng continues to comfort Su Yu. Wait for me. In a few short years, or perhaps a decade at most, I will fulfill my promise and marry you openly. I shake my head. A decade is too long. I must grant this ill-fated pair their wish now. So when Gu Fufeng returned to the bridal chamber, he found me standing before him with solemn resolve. I curtsied and addressed him, "Husband, I have a request." Startled, Gu Fufeng hurriedly supported me. Wan, speak freely. I'd walk through fire and water for you. I lifted my gaze, my voice unwavering. Husband, I ask you to take my cousin as your concubine. Gu Fufeng froze. After a moment, he waved his hands urgently. Wan, this is absolutely impossible. Not only have I promised your parents to be with you for one lifetime, one person, but I also harbor no romantic feelings for Su Yu whatsoever. Ever since I rescued you from the silk shop, you have been the only one in my heart. I cut Gu Fufeng off. Husband, you may choose to be unkind to Miss Su Yu, but I cannot be unrighteous. A life is at stake, I cannot stand by and do nothing. Besides, as a woman myself, I understand her deep devotion to you. Miss Su Yu dared to storm the wedding banquet today seeking nothing more than to become your concubine. This is hardly an unreasonable request. Why should you refuse? Before Gu Fufeng could respond, I waved my hand again to cut him off. Rest assured, my lord, I said. Consider this a matter of saving a life. As for whether you choose to truly cherish her afterward, that is your affair. I shall never interfere. At this, Gu Fufeng could find no retort, only managing a dry, rest assured. Wan, I will not favor her. Who would believe that? I sneered inwardly, but outwardly only smiled. It's getting late. Let's sleep. After all the turmoil of the night, dawn was approaching, and naturally, I had no desire for consummation. This suited me perfectly. Having lived through my previous life, the thought of being intimate with Gu Fufeng again felt like torture. The next morning, Gu Fufeng awoke and, as if to make up for last night, deliberately drew near to share a moment of intimacy. I, however, had already slipped out of bed. Chuanshu, Xiaolu, attend to my ablutions and have the servants prepare the sedan chair. We're going to fetch Miss Su Yu. Before me was a delicate, sweet face, willow leaf brows, almond-shaped eyes, like a lotus blossom glistening with dew. I sighed. Miss Suyu is so exquisitely beautiful. Even I feel pity for her. Why not let me decide today and give her to my husband as a concubine? Suyu jerked her head up, her small face filled with panic and unease. Yesterday's ploy was merely feigning retreat to win Gu Fufeng's pity. How could she truly desire to be a concubine? After all, according to our dynasty's customs, even if the primary wife is divorced or passes away, the husband takes a new wife. It is unheard of to elevate a concubine to primary wife. If confirmed as a concubine, she would forever lose the chance to become Gu Fufeng's legitimate wife. So Suyu quickly held back tears, her voice soft and subdued. I did once harbor foolish feelings for my cousin. But seeing how affectionate he and Miss Su were yesterday, I know his heart belongs only to her. How could I ever intrude? I have already abandoned that foolish notion. Gu Fufeng, seated nearby, quietly exhaled in relief, likely satisfied with Suyu's quick-witted response. I smiled gently. Miss Suyu, have you truly let go of your past feelings? Suyu lowered her eyes. Indeed. That is most fortunate. I clapped my hands. In that case, as your elder sister-in-law, I shall arrange a marriage for Miss Suyu. At these words, both Gu Fufeng and Suyu paled visibly. Gu Fufeng maintained his composure somewhat better, but Suyu blurted out immediately. No. Only after the words left her lips did she realize her slip, hastily covering her mouth. But it was too late. I chuckled leisurely. See? How could someone who's loved a man for over a decade simply let go? Miss Suyu clearly still loves my husband and refuses to marry another. Since that's the case, I naturally must grant you your wish. Rest assured, as the eldest legitimate daughter of the Su family, I was raised with strict discipline. Jealousy and aggression are among the 7 grounds for divorce. I would never commit such sins. I promise to live in harmony with Sister Suyu. Suyu looked to Gu Fufeng for help. Gu Fufeng responded with his eyes, signaling her to refuse at all costs. This cannot be agreed to under any circumstances. Setting aside the fact that if Suyu became a concubine, she would forfeit any chance of ever becoming the primary wife. If Gu Fufeng takes a secondary wife so soon after marrying his primary wife, our Su family members will inevitably harbor significant grievances against him. It would become exceedingly difficult for us to continue supporting him wholeheartedly. Suyu's gaze upon Gu Fufeng was like a reassuring balm. She took a deep breath and said to me, Miss Su's kind offer is deeply appreciated. But Suyu's mind is made up. She refuses to become her cousin's concubine. Her resolve was absolute. To press further would feel like coercing a maiden. I gathered my sleeves and rose. Speaking softly, I only wish for your well-being. Since you refuse, I have no right to force you, husband. Shall we go? I rose to leave, deliberately twisting my ankle as I stepped out. Gu Fufeng hurried to support me. Suppressing my nausea, I clasped his arm and pouted. My ankle will surely swell. Would you help me apply some medicated oil? Gu Lang? Would you? Having endured Suyu's ordeal, Gu Fufeng remained constantly on edge. Now presented with an opportunity to show devotion, he eagerly replied, Of course. In the courtyard, he fetched the medicated oil and applied it for me. The scene was truly tender and affectionate. I glanced over discreetly and sure enough, Suyu stood at the window of the side room, watching us with a dark expression. I smiled softly to myself. I gave Chuanshu and Xiaolu a knowing look. They immediately understood. We'll fetch tea for the young mistress. Though they claimed to fetch tea, the 2 of them lingered near the side room, sipping their cups and chatting idly. Chuanshu said, Hey, did you hear? That Lu girl from the east side of town, plagued by poverty and illness, cried out in pain all night last night and passed away this morning. Xiaolu exclaimed in surprise. How tragic! Didn't she have a childhood sweetheart cousin who was an official in the capital? Who said he'd come to marry her? Chuinshu shook her head. What good is childhood affection? That cousin married a beautiful, high-born official's daughter in the capital. He barely saw Miss Lu for years, and gradually forgot her entirely. Xiaoli sighed. Miss Lu was too foolish back then. When her cousin told her to wait, she truly stayed here waiting all this time, handing over all the initiative to others. Had she insisted on accompanying him to the capital back then, with her talents, beauty, and resourcefulness, even if she couldn't become the main wife, she would at least have been a favored concubine in a golden chamber. Her prominence might not have been inferior to the mistress's. How could she have ended up in such a pitiful state? Dying of illness? The sound of a teacup shattering from a dropped hand echoed from the side room. Chuinshu and Xiaolu exchanged a glance and slipped away silently. They returned with tea to my side. One look from them, and I understood immediately what I wanted Suyue to hear. She had already heard. So, Suyue, dare you take the gamble? Dare you wager that Gu Fufeng's affection for you is as enduring as the sea drying and stones crumbling? Never to change? I bet you don't. Otherwise, you wouldn't have stormed wedding banquets time and again, faked your death, and resorted to every trick in the book. Sure enough, just as Gu Fufeng and I prepared to leave, Suyu suddenly burst out of the side room. She approached Gu Fufeng and me, bowing low. Cousin, Yue regrets it. Yue only begs to follow you, without seeking any formal status. She looked at me, pleading, please grant this. Madam. Gu Fufeng's face instantly turned as grim as a corpse. I had to muster all my strength to stifle my laughter. Soon, the news spread that Gu Fufeng had taken a concubine the very next day after his wedding. It said that even the chief minister of the cabinet in the capital, who had always held him in the highest regard, shook his head and sighed upon hearing this. I had thought Gu Fufeng, though born poor, possessed exceptional learning and talent, and I intended to take him as my final disciple. Little did I know he would prove so frivolous in his conduct. As for me, people responded with sympathy. The Su family marrying their eldest daughter to the Gu family was a clear case of a downgrade in marriage. They sought nothing more than sparing their daughter future humiliation and ensuring a harmonious, trouble-free marriage. But this Gu Fufeng marries a noble lady, then takes a concubine the very next day? Such haste! Could it be he's already gotten that concubine pregnant and must rush to legitimize her? Gu Fufeng, unable to voice his grievances, could only plead with me. My dear, the rumors are raging. Might you clarify things for me? Sipping my fragrant tea, I sighed softly. Husband, it's not that I don't wish to clear your name, but people believe that the innocent will be proven innocent. Spending too much energy defending oneself only risks making things worse. In my past life, Gu Fufeng had used this very tactic against me. Suyu had clearly thrown herself into the well. Yet rumors spread that I had driven her to death. When I begged Gu Fufeng to clear my name, he replied, the innocent will be proven innocent. Saying more will only make things worse. Later, I learned those rumors about me forcing Suyu to her death were spread by Gu Fufeng himself. Afterwards, he killed me and sent a divorce letter back to the Su family, listing 3 major offenses: barrenness, disobedience to parents, and boundless jealousy. Sisters share the same blood, one's disgrace tarnishes them all. Thus, the reputation of the Su family's daughters plummeted overnight, and my 3 younger sisters' entire futures were ruined by association. Reputation is a deadly weapon, and Gu Fufeng knew exactly how to wield it against me. Even in this life, reborn as I am, that blade still hangs over my head. I cannot immediately annul the betrothal or divorce Gu Fufeng, lest my reputation suffer and jeopardize my sisters' future marriages. But it matters little. I can turn that blade against Gu Fufeng himself. Soon, the day arrived for Gu Fufeng to return to the capital to assume his post. Upon his arrival, I had word spread that the journey had left me with a severe cold, making it impossible for me to attend to my husband for the next few months. I had already planted spies among Suyu's servants. Before long, one of the maids came to see me in secret. I smiled as I picked up a ginger-wrapped plum, nibbling it while asking, "And how did she react upon hearing the news?" The maid whispered. She was practically beside herself with joy. "Since noon, she's been bathing and dressing, changing outfits several times. She even had the matron apply the fashionable pear blossom makeup popular in the capital, saying it's her master's favorite." I chuckled. No wonder Suyu was so elated. Though being a concubine wasn't ideal, at least she wouldn't have to endure over a decade of lonely waiting. Now she could openly stay by Gu Fufeng's side, and heaven seemed to favor her. As the main wife, I fell ill upon arriving in the capital. Yet the master couldn't go without attendance at night. So naturally, she, his only beautiful concubine, would have to step in. If she could seize this chance to conceive, bear the eldest son, and combine that with Gu Fufeng's favor, she'd stand a strong chance of rivaling the main wife. She'd never have to fear me again. I smiled at the maid. Aren't there many methods in the capital to aid conception and pregnancy? Incense, herbs, let her know about them all. She'll surely be even happier. The maid nodded and withdrew. Sure enough, by afternoon, Suyu's servant left the courtyard. He returned carrying a bundle of herbs, and soon the scent of simmering medicine wafted through the air. The fertility potion was drunk. The pear blossom makeup applied, everything was ready. All that remained was to wait joyfully for Gu Fufeng's arrival. But, as the moon rose above the willow tips, I leaned lazily against the cushion and said to the man before me, "My lord, if you stay with me, I won't be able to serve you." Gu Fufeng drew closer. "Feeding me bird's nest, no matter. Then I shall serve my lady myself." His gaze was tender, my smile charming. We truly looked like the most devoted couple. I drank the bird's nest from his hand, silently counting the minutes in my mind. Some people should be going mad by now. Sure enough, moments later, Suyu's maid rushed in. Her face bore a red, swollen mark in tear streaks. "My lady, it's terrible. Lady Su suddenly suffered a heart attack and is in great distress. You must come see her at once." Veins throbbed violently on Gu Fufeng's temples. He stood up, clenching his teeth. If she had a sudden heart attack, she should have called the doctor. Why come to me? I sat nearby, lifting a silk handkerchief to cover a faint, cold smile at the corner of my lips. Gu Fufeng didn't know that Suyu, filled with joy, had made all these preparations just hoping he would come. Yet he preferred to stay the night with me, someone who couldn't share his bed, rather than go to her. For Suyu, this was a devastating blow, enough to drive anyone mad. Nor did Suyu know that though Gu Fufeng had just arrived in the capital, my people had already spread the rumor that he took a concubine on the second day after his wedding. Thus, gossip swirled outside, everyone suspecting he intended to favor his concubine and neglect his wife. At this critical juncture, even if I fell ill, he couldn't bypass me to favor Suyu first. And all this, I had calculated. So I deliberately let Suyu reach the peak of joyful anticipation, only to douse her with a bucket of ice-cold water. A woman capable of attempting suicide by drowning multiple times would, when driven mad, be utterly ruthless. Sure enough, before the maid could finish speaking, another servant burst in. "Master, concubine Su is in excruciating pain. She says she can't bear it anymore. She just slashed her wrists with broken porcelain shards. Blood is everywhere. She fears she won't survive and begs only to see you one last time." Gu Fufeng could no longer contain himself. He stormed out the door, racing towards Suyu's courtyard. I rose to my feet. Moonlight filtered through the lattice window, casting a faint chill upon my face. I had already investigated. The medicine the servant brought Su that afternoon contained both fertility-enhancing and aphrodisiac ingredients. If Gu Fufeng could go to her, she would surely have her wish fulfilled. We would all have our wishes fulfilled. Days later, the scandal of the newly crowned top scholar, Gu Fufeng, spread throughout the capital. He had lingered in his concubine's chambers for 3 full days after returning from his wedding, even taking leave from court duties. In our dynasty, an official favoring a concubine over his wife severely tarnished his reputation. Even masters of prominent families, however fond of their concubines, conducted themselves discreetly and restrainedly. None dared openly tarnish their family honor. For a time, the young men of the capital made Gu Fufeng the butt of their after-dinner jokes. Have you heard? That top scholar has been staying in his concubine's quarters since arriving in the capital, even taking sick leave from court. Indeed, it's utterly scandalous and brings shame upon all his fellow examinees. Meanwhile, in the inner quarters, noble wives whispered to their husbands, "My lord, did you know Gu Fufeng's lawful wife is the eldest daughter of the Su family from Jiangnan?" On their wedding night, that beautiful concubine disrupted the proceedings. They likely never consummated their marriage. Favoring a concubine over one's wife is a grave taboo. Before consummating his marriage with his lawful wife, Gu Fufeng openly favored his concubine, causing a scandal that shook the entire city. His conduct is utterly reprehensible. Your Excellency, it would be best to avoid close association with such a man. In an instant, Gu Fufeng transformed from the newly crowned top scholar everyone sought to befriend into a pariah, shunned like a rat crossing the street. His humble origins meant he had always moved in the circles of literati who valued merit over lineage, both in his past life and this one. Yet while these scholars disregarded family background, they held reputation in the highest regard. With Gu Fufeng's reputation so severely tarnished, the literati naturally shunned him. In the inner quarters, I savored the honey-sweet osmanthus cakes, listening to the thunderous rage echoing from the front hall, my mood delightfully light. Truthfully, Gu Fufeng wasn't inherently hedonistic or lacking in propriety. But there was little he could do. The aphrodisiac incense you had procured was simply too potent. Of course, she believed she had found the incense maker herself. But in reality, I had arranged it for her. As for the details circulating in the capital's rumors, I had naturally instructed the maids and servants in my household to frequent the taverns, drinking and spreading the tales. Gu Fufeng was now in a complete mess. No matter which nobleman's residence he sent his calling cards to, he was turned away at the door. The root cause of all this, naturally, was Su Yu. Yet, when Gu Fufeng discovered the aphrodisiac incense and confronted Su Yu with it, Su Yu knelt down, weeping. "Cousin, you truly acted foolishly in resorting to such means. But it was only because I love you so deeply. Miss Su comes from a noble family, possessing both talent and beauty. If you were to grow tired of me and forget Yue, what would I do? Miss Su has everything, but Yue has only you." My cousin, Yue, was utterly terrified. So Yue thought, if I could serve my cousin, share one night of intimacy with him even if he later blamed me and sought to kill me, I would accept it willingly. She crawled on her knees before Gu Fufeng, seized his hand, and guided it to her belly. "Cousin, look, he's moving. We have a child." Gu Fufeng had been seething with rage, but at these words, he froze. Su pressed her dew-kissed lotus-petal face against his knee and murmured softly, "Yue only wants to bear this child for you, cousin. After that, whether Miss Su sells me or kills me, I'll accept it willingly." Gu Fufeng remained silent for a long time. Finally, he stroked Su Yu's head and sighed deeply. "You fool." Outside the latticed window, I overheard everything and turned to leave. Chuinshu and Xiaolu followed, murmuring indignantly in my ear, "Our master is too cruel. Concubine Su ruined his career like this. Yet he still dotes on her. I stroked the nail polish on my fingertips and said softly, Gu Fufeng is a man who calculates everything, climbing relentlessly upward. Su Yu, however, was someone he knew and understood from his humble youth, perhaps the only genuine heart in his cold existence. So it's only natural he can't bear to part with her. Chuinshu and Xiaolu still looked resentful. I waved my handkerchief. Enough. There are only a handful of us in this mansion. If Gu Fufeng won't harm Suyu, he'll likely turn his attention to me. Instead of wasting your breath on anger, go offer incense before the Buddha. Pray for your mistress's safety. Chuinshu and Xiaoyou's faces paled. Muttering Amitabha Buddha, they dashed toward the Buddhist hall. I smiled. If the gods and Buddhas choose to protect me, that is naturally a blessing. But should they refuse, I have my own means of self-salvation. Calling over a servant boy, I said calmly, Madame Su's pregnancy requires careful attention. Go fetch the finest physician in the capital. The physician summoned by the servant boy was quite a remarkable man, with a face as fair as powdered porcelain and lips as red as cherries. Anyone who saw him would call him handsome. In front of everyone, I entrusted this handsome physician with a crucial task. This physician is here first and foremost to ensure Lady Su's safe pregnancy. Whether it's medicine or dietary supplements, choose only the finest and most expensive. If anything is lacking, just tell me, I will personally cover the cost from my private funds. Besides Lady Su, there is another who requires the physician's daily pulse-taking, my husband, Gu Fufeng. I dabbed at the corners of my eyes with a handkerchief, my voice tinged with worry. The Gu residence has grown desolate and unwelcoming lately. My husband's spirits are heavy. He has no appetite, and he grows thinner by the day. It pains me to see him like this. Should my lord's health fail, the Gu household would have no future prospects. Therefore, I implore the physician to examine my lord daily, prescribe medicine to restore his vitality, and if his complexion improves, the heavy burden on my heart will finally lift. After speaking these words, I knew my reputation for virtue would soon echo throughout the capital. Sure enough, even when Chuinshu and Xiaolu stepped out to buy needlework supplies, they overheard whispers everywhere. Madame Su of the Gu household is truly a kind and virtuous woman, though her husband favored a concubine over her, and that concubine conceived first. She bore it without resentment. Instead, she used her own savings to ensure the concubine's safe pregnancy, wholly devoted to securing an heir for her husband. And when her husband fell ill, she insisted the physician examine him daily, showing endless concern and anxiety. To marry a virtuous wife, to have a wife like Madame Su. What more could a man desire? Hearing these words, I laughed until tears streamed down my face. How utterly ridiculous. In my past life, I truly loved Gu Fufeng, yet ended up bearing all the blame, tarnishing my entire family's reputation. This life, I've been nothing but scheming, yet the world sings my praises, hailing me as the capital's most virtuous woman. Only mother and my sisters wrote to ask if I was unhappy. Eldest sister, that Gu fellow seems no good. If he wrongs you, come home. This was second sister. Don't fret over reputation either. If need be, all Su daughters will remain unmarried and stay by mother's side till our day's end. This was third sister. Fourth sister, still learning to write, drew me a crooked smiley face, meaning, be happy. I smiled and drew a smile back on the paper. No matter how much unhappiness there was in the past, happiness would come in the future. I wouldn't wait too long. The physician had been at the residence for over half a month. That day, he came as usual to report to me. I put on my cloak and said with a smile, "It's stuffy in here. I was just thinking of taking a stroll in the garden. Why not join me? Doctor? We can discuss your findings as we walk. What do you say?" The doctor replied. Perfect timing. I've noticed several medicinal flowers in the garden and was hoping to examine them closely. And so, the doctor and I walked together into the courtyard. I pulled out a packet of candied fruit and offered it to him. He glanced down, smiled gently, and tucked it into his robe. Suddenly, a crackling sound echoed from behind us. It sounded like someone had stepped on a branch on the ground. I turned around, but the garden was empty. Not a soul in sight. The physician remarked. Strange. Just now, it seemed like someone was behind the bushes. I chuckled. It's nothing. That person saw what they came for and has surely left. The one hiding in the bushes, of course, was Suyu. Since becoming pregnant, she took daily strolls in the garden after meals as a pastime. I deliberately timed my appearance to cross paths with her. According to my informants, that day, upon seeing me and the physician, Suyu turned with a delighted gasp and dashed straight toward Gu Fufeng's quarters. See cousin. Suyu arrived breathless before Gu Fufeng. Gu Fufeng had recently been reprimanded by the Grand Secretary and was already in a foul mood. Why all the fuss again? Suyu's voice trembled with excitement. It's not fuss. I just saw that slut having an affair with the physician in the garden. Gu Fufeng's brow twitched violently. Suyu immediately began embellishing her account, how I had offered the candied fruit to the physician, how he had accepted it immediately, and how familiar and intimate their manner had been. Gu Fufeng sensed Suyu's deliberate exaggeration and frowned. At the end of the day, it's just a packet of candied fruit. That doesn't prove they have an affair. Does it? Suyu shook her head, gripping Gu Fufeng's hand urgently. Cousin, this single act may not prove it. But when combined with other details, they must be up to something. Think about it, your body shows no real illness. Yet that wretch has the physician visiting daily. How utterly suspicious. So, the pretense of treatment is false, the true purpose is secret trysts. Gu Fufeng's expression turned utterly cold. He clenched his fists. Adultery is one of the 7 grounds for divorce, punishable by drowning. How dare Suwan? Suyu clutched her stomach, barely containing her excitement. She thought it would take a decade to bring me down. But heaven has smiled upon me, the chance is right before my eyes. Cousin, you've always cherished me. Unable to consummate the marriage with that slut, she's grown restless and lonely. Naturally, she'd turn to adultery. Gu Fufeng's face turned ashen. Regardless of whether he has feelings for me or not, I am his lawful wife. His lawful wife committing adultery was a profound humiliation to his dignity. He summoned a servant. You immediately gather men and expel that physician from the estate. Ensure he can never meet Suwan again. Just as the servant turned to obey, Gu Fufeng abruptly yanked him back. No. Gu Fufeng murmured softly. After the initial fury subsided, a sliver of reason returned to him. No. They must meet. Only this way can I be saved. Gu Fufeng's eyes grew increasingly bright. He turned to the servant and said, I'll draft a letter now. You take it to the Grand Secretary. My birthday is in a few days. I want to invite the Grand Secretary and my fellow disciples to our home for wine. Late that night, the servant reported everything to me. I smiled, rewarded him with a handful of silver, then dismissed him. Everything unfolded exactly as I'd anticipated. I knew it, with Gu Fufeng's intellect. He'd inevitably devised this strategy of besieging Wei to rescue Zhao. Truthfully, it was his best option at this juncture. His reputation was in tatters now. Everyone claimed he'd married the eldest daughter of the Su family yet failed to cherish her. But what if the Su family's eldest daughter were exposed as an immoral woman of loose morals? Then Gu Fufeng would become the undeniable victim, and no one would dwell on his past favoring his concubines. Therefore, even if the physician and I had no illicit affair, Gu Fufeng must create one for us. Sure enough, the next morning, Gu Fufeng informed me he would invite the Grand Secretary and fellow disciples to celebrate his birthday with wine. His explanation, however, was that he would host them at the capital's grandest tavern, the Moonview Pavilion. Fellow disciples drinking together demanded revelry, so I would likely spend the night at the Moonview Pavilion and not return home. Suyu's pregnancy tonics seemed nearly depleted. The physician would arrive that day to prescribe a new batch, so the task of entertaining him would fall to you, my lady. I understood perfectly. Gu Fufeng was orchestrating the perfect setting for my affair. My husband absent from home, my lover arriving at the door. Once I felt secure enough to meet the physician in private, I discovered he had actually brought the Grand Secretary and others to the mansion for drinks, caught red-handed. Gu Fufeng's grand performance was so masterfully staged. Even the audience cheered for me. So I nodded gently, smiling sweetly, my lord. Rest assured. He held my hand, and we shared a tender smile. This was the final act of affection. Soon, gongs and drums sounded, and the actors took the stage. We were about to tear off our masks completely, locked in a fight to the death. That night, neither stars nor moon graced the sky. The physician sat across from me, writing a prescription. Only Chuanchu and Xiaolu remained in the room. This defied propriety. By convention, an outside physician was a foreign man. The lady of the house should never meet him alone. Such a breach of decorum could never be explained away, no matter how one tried. Yet we did it anyway. An attendant had already informed Gu Fufeng. My lord, the physician has entered the ladies' chambers alone. All other maidservants in the courtyard were dismissed, leaving only the 2 bridal attendants to serve within. A trusted servant was specifically posted to guard the courtyard, barring anyone from entering. Gu Fufeng's fingertips trembled. He closed his eyes briefly, understood. Then, opening his eyes, he addressed the Grand Secretary and fellow disciples nearby in his usual gentle tone. Drinking alone is dull. Why not join me in moonlit flower viewing and drinking games? What do you say? The Grand Secretary had been utterly disillusioned with Gu Fufeng and initially refused to grace the Gu residence with his presence. But Gu Fufeng had written a lengthy letter, tearfully pleading that the previous incident involved hidden circumstances, that he had truly been misunderstood. He begged the Grand Secretary to consider their former teacher-student bond and grant him one final chance to explain. Thus, the Grand Secretary had reluctantly agreed to come. With the Grand Secretary's arrival, his disciples followed suit. These were all influential ministers of the court, many accompanied by their wives and female relatives. It could truly be said that the city's elite had gathered in one place. Gu Fufeng proposed they go outside to admire the flowers. After gaining everyone's agreement, Siu immediately stepped forward to lead the female guests. The Grand Secretary's wife murmured discontentedly, "Why is a concubine hosting us? Where is the mistress?" She turned to Gu Fufeng. "The capital whispers of your favoring concubines over your wife. For an official, scholarship ranks second to virtue. You must not defy propriety." Gu Fufeng bowed, his expression hinting at deep sorrow. "Your student has been steeped in the classics since childhood, nurtured by the sage's teachings. I naturally understand the wisdom in your words, madam. But your student is deeply devoted to honor, yet she refuses to draw near. Take today's birthday banquet. For instance, Warner should have hosted the guests, but she claimed to be unwell and wished only to rest in her courtyard. Your student had no choice but to send Suyu to attend. Suyu, dressed in a light-colored silk gown, stood nearby, looking pitifully helpless as she added, "I have often urged my lord to visit the mistress's chambers, but she refuses to share his bed. I even suspect that her heart belongs to another, which is why she refuses." Before she could finish, Gu Fufeng snapped harshly, "Silence." Suyu immediately knelt, tears welling in her eyes. Gu Fufeng massaged his temples in silence, appearing to tacitly acknowledge Su Yu's words. The Grand Elder's wife's expression darkened. I've seen Wanner of the Su family in her boudoir. She's the most sensible and virtuous young lady. How could she be as you describe? There must be some misunderstanding. Gu Fufeng hastily bowed his hands. If that is the case, might I request your assistance in advising Wanner? If any misunderstanding exists, resolving it today would mean a harmonious marriage for them. That would be the finest birthday gift I could receive. Su Yu hastily added. Indeed. If my lord and mistress are reconciled, this servant will no longer bear the slander of being a seductress. I shall lead the lady to your quarters at once. With that, the Grand Secretary's wife could not refuse and followed to my room. Many noble wives followed her, while the male relatives, guided by Gu Fufeng, admired the flowers beside the crabapple tree in my courtyard. The audience was finally assembled. Su Yu and Gu Fufeng exchanged a silent glance, their excitement palpable. Then, Su Yu pushed open my door and let out a shriek. Madam, you were actually with the physician. Hearing the commotion, Gu Fufeng rushed inside immediately. Voices rose in a clamor, like boiling water. I watched the lampwick burst into flames and smiled silently. Finally, it had come. The physician was bound by the servants and pinned to the ground. I was surrounded by the crowd in the center. A throng of women crowded around, while the men, unable to enter the room directly, listened to the commotion from the courtyard. After all, such a grand scene of catching someone in the act of adultery was something no one wanted to miss. Kneeling on the ground, my face pale, tears streaming down my cheeks, I looked at Gu Fufeng. Husband, there must be some misunderstanding. I have absolutely no private affair with the physician. Before Gu Fufeng could speak, Su Yu blurted out. These past days, she'd been the city's most reviled seductress, while I was hailed as a virtuous wife. Now, nearly every noblewoman in the capital was gathered here, and she couldn't wait to show them what this so-called virtuous wife was really made of. No private affair? Su Yu's voice was almost shrill. 2 days ago, I saw you hand him the candied fruit you made yourself. He accepted it with a smile. How intimate their manner was. I froze, staring at Gu Fufeng in disbelief. Husband, is this why you've been suspicious of me? I should have told you sooner. The physician lost his wife last year, leaving behind an 8-year-old daughter. She's visited my quarters several times and adores the candied fruits I make. So whenever the physician came, I'd prepare some candied fruits for him to take home to his daughter. The physician, pinned to the ground, cried out in protest, Your Honor. Those candied fruits were truly made for Shi Jierer. Having lost her mother at such a young age, the lady genuinely meant well in showing extra care. I beg you, Your Honor, please do not misunderstand the lady. After hearing this, everyone froze in place. Gu Fufeng froze too. In that instant, he might have subconsciously realized that the physician and I truly had no illicit affair. But once the arrow was released, there was no turning back. Having come this far, he could not retreat. Whether there was an affair or not, he had to make it seem so. He glanced at Su Yu, who immediately understood. She declared loudly, Madam, you speak with such silver-tongued eloquence, evading the crucial points. Forget about those candied fruits. You skipped the Lord's birthday banquet today to meet secretly with another man here. Do you think we're all blind? My eyes, swollen and red from crying, turned to Gu Fufeng. My lord said he invited the Grand Secretary to drink at the moon viewing pavilion and forbade me from going. I haven't left the courtyard all day and had no idea the birthday banquet was moved to the mansion. I stumbled to my feet. This was indeed a breach of etiquette on my part as the mistress of the house. I'll go prepare for the banquet immediately. Gu Fufeng struck me down with a single palm. I stared up at him in disbelief. His eyes were crimson as blood. Warner, stop skirting the issue. I didn't blame you for missing the birthday banquet. But as a noble lady, you knew perfectly well that meeting a man in private is a grave offense. Why? Why were you alone with him in a room? How can I believe you two are innocent? I lifted my head, gazing at Gu Fufeng through eyes blurred by tears. His performance was truly convincing. Those blood-red eyes. That voice trembling with despair. Who wouldn't believe he was a husband deeply in love with his wife? Only to be betrayed? Suppressing the waves of coldness in my heart, I cried out in defense. I was not alone with the physician. I kept Chuanshu and Xiaolu in the room. Su seemed to anticipate my words, snorting coldly to interrupt me. Who doesn't know those two were the mistress's dowry attendants? Keeping them there hardly counts as keeping people. The mistress's courtyard is filled with servants, maids, and wet nurses. If she hadn't intended to have an affair with the physician, there would have been no need to dismiss them all. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. I know I handled this poorly, but I truly had no other choice. There was no illicit affair between me and the physician. I dismissed everyone because our conversation must remain confidential. I feared gossip and rumors. So I cleared the room. Su scoffed, in broad daylight. What could possibly be too private to say? Tears welling. I looked at Gu Fufeng. Husband, may I tell you privately? Truly, it cannot be spoken of. Gu Fufeng remained silent. Having come this far, there was no turning back. If he couldn't crush me completely here, all his painstaking efforts would be wasted. After a long pause, Gu Fufeng spoke. Wan, if there remains even a shred of marital affection between us, tell me the truth right now. Before everyone, what did you discuss with the physician that no one else could possibly know? If you cannot provide a convincing answer, I fear I must treat this as adultery, a crime warranting divorce. I collapsed to the ground, exhausted, as if drained of my last ounce of strength. Very well, I murmured softly. Since that is the case, physician, you may speak. The physician seemed ready to speak all along. Lifting his head with effort, he declared in a voice loud enough for all to hear. Lord Gu suffers from congenital impotence. Silence. A deathly silence. Everyone froze. The wind blew, carrying only the physician's voice. A month ago, the lady entrusted me to diagnose Lord Gu's pulse and regulate his diet. But during the diagnosis, I discovered Lord Gu appears to suffer from congenital impotence, a birth defect rendering him incapable of procreation. I knelt nearby, seemingly weeping, yet my heart sneered coldly. This was something I knew from my past life. I had been married to Gu Fufeng for 10 years without bearing children. Among the 7 grounds for divorce he wrote in the divorce letter, infertility was one. After rebirth, I had secretly sought medical help long ago to ensure my own body was without issue. Therefore, the problem must lie with Gu Fufeng. The physician's voice continued. This matter is of grave consequence. Not only would it severely damage a man's honor, but it would also jeopardize the family line. Lord Gu has been deeply troubled lately. Should he suffer such a devastating blow, he might fall gravely ill. Therefore, after consulting with the lady, we decided not to inform Lord Gu for now. The lady summoned me today to secretly inquire whether I'd found a cure for the eunuch's affliction. I've already informed her, physicians are not gods, this ailment cannot be healed. All the lady's actions stem from protecting the master's honor. There is truly no private affection between us. The physician finally finished speaking. I lifted my head and tugged at Gu Fufeng's robe hem. Husband. He paid me no heed. The room fell into an eerie silence. Gu Fufeng's gaze, indeed everyone's gaze, was fixed on one person. Su Yu. She stood to the side, stunned by the rapid turn of events. Her pale gown outlined her figure, the slight curve at her abdomen already revealing her condition. If Gu Fufeng was unable to conceive, then where did this child come from? An unknown span of silence passed. A sharp, metallic screech pierced the air. Gu Fufeng had drawn the sword from the Imperial Guard commander's belt. Chaos erupted. People wanted to stop him, yet none dared to intervene. Gu Fufeng charged toward Suyu. Hair disheveled, eyes bloodshot. This time, it wasn't feigned, he truly felt as if he might weep blood. The sword tip pressed against Suyu's throat. Gu Fufeng seemed to see nothing else, his eyes, maddened and frenzied, reflected only that dew-kissed lotus-like face. She was his cousin, his childhood sweetheart. The blade trembled, mirroring Gu Fufeng's voice. I did all those things, endured all that suffering, only to love you, protect you, give you dignity and honor, so you'd never again be helpless and bullied. And you? Why did you betray me? Suyu seemed to know her death was certain. Facing her doom, she lifted her eyes. A single tear fell, followed by a smile twisted beyond recognition. Was it truly me you loved? No, cousin. I know you too well. You only ever loved yourself. Now I can tell you. Suyu lifted her gaze, uttering each word like a dagger to the heart. Not once did I find pleasure in our bed. The sword's glint pierced her chest, blood spattering. The women screamed, some fainting. Amidst the chaos, Gu Fufeng stared at Suyu's unclosed eyes, murmuring blankly, "Why did you do this to me? I schemed against everyone, but only you had my true heart." The Grand Secretary's wife still retained her composure. She snapped harshly, "And what of Wanner's true heart? Why should she be the victim of your schemes?" I immediately covered my face and sobbed. Gu Fufeng tossed aside the bloodied sword. He stared at Suyu's body, then turned his gaze to me. For a long time. Suddenly, as if understanding something, a vast realization washed over his eyes. Step by step, he approached me. Gu Fufeng's face contorted like a demon. "Suwan, you knew all along, didn't you? This was all your scheme." I watched Gu Fufeng. He was truly brilliant. Alas, at this very moment, that brilliance became his greatest torment. The clearer his understanding, the deeper his agony. Sure enough, countless emotions flickered through Gu Fufeng's eyes: terror, regret, hatred, endless and overwhelming. His entire body trembled. He understood. He understood everything. I savored his expression, my heart trembling with satisfaction. Yet my face cried out, "Husband, what are you saying? We are one in marriage. Your happiness is mine. No one desires your well-being more than I." Then, while everyone stood at a distance, I threw myself at him, in a posture that bordered on an embrace. I whispered softly into his ear, "Yes, I knew all along. Gu Fufeng, you betrayed me, deceived me, used me. I knew it all along. That's why I wanted you to lose everything, to be mocked by thousands, cursed by tens of thousands, to die without a proper burial." I released Gu Fufeng and looked into his eyes. He stared at me blankly, then lunged violently for the sword beside him. "You poisonous woman. I'll drag you to hell with me." The instant Gu Fufeng swung his sword at me, an arrow shot from behind, piercing his eye with pinpoint accuracy. I rose to my feet, brushing dust from my clothes. In his fury, Gu Fufeng hadn't noticed the Imperial Guards had already arrived at the commander's residence when he killed Suyu. Their bows were drawn, arrows poised. One more injury to anyone, and the arrows would fly. That was precisely why I had stepped forward. Gazing at Gu Fufeng lying in a pool of blood, it suddenly struck me, if this world has foolish loyalty and foolish filial piety, then perhaps there also exists foolish virtue. And so, like a truly foolish and virtuous wife. I stamped my feet and wailed, "Husband, don't die. I don't want you to die." Heaven heard my plea and did not let Gu Fufeng die immediately. He lost an eye and was imprisoned in the heavenly dungeon. The verdict from the Supreme Court of Justice was delivered: murderous assault. First killing his concubine, then attempting to kill his wife, truly horrifying. He was sentenced to execution by beheading after the autumn harvest. It was a bit of a pity, thinking back to the agony of being drowned in a pig's cage in my past life. I actually wanted him to live longer, to suffer more before dying. Rumor has it Gu Fufeng remained restless even in prison. He ranted from his cell, claiming it was all my scheming that led to his downfall. No one believed him. Everyone hailed me as a paragon of a virtuous wife, my only misfortune being such a husband. I strictly upheld this image of a virtuous wife. On the eve of his execution, I even brought him a food box, bidding him a tearful farewell. After months apart, Gu Fufeng had wasted away to a skeletal frame, a shadow of the elegant scholar I first met in Jiangnan. I presented a flask of wine. "This is spring water brew, clear and refreshing. Your favorite. I brought it especially for you." Gu Fufeng stared at me with his hollow, single eye. "Su Wan, you've come to demand the divorce papers, haven't you? Let me tell you this, I won't give them to you. When I die, you'll be the wife of a criminal minister. You've been dragged down by me this entire life, let's all go to hell together." I poured the wine slowly, taking a cup myself first. "You're overthinking it, Gu. The capital has long been peaceful, untroubled by turmoil for ages. Thus, your actions that day startled even the emperor and the empress dowager." Upon hearing of this, the empress dowager sighed, lamenting how considerate and virtuous I am, yet so unfortunate in my choice of husband. She said, "If even a woman of my virtue meets such an end, it would surely dishearten all women under heaven. Therefore, she has issued an edict to take me as her adopted daughter. As for your marriage to me, since we never consummated it, the Empress Dowager says it counts for nothing. I remain a maiden awaiting marriage. Of course, this is somewhat far-fetched, but since it comes from the Empress Dowager, and you, Gu Lang, are a scholar, you surely understand that propriety must yield to power. So, now that I am both the eldest daughter of the Su family and the Empress Dowager's adopted daughter, renowned for my virtue, suitors from the capital come to propose in endless succession. I think I shall take my time choosing." With every word I spoke, Gu Fufeng coughed up a mouthful of blood. He pointed at me. You're clearly a viper." I smiled. "Mr. Gu, people are far more terrifying than vipers." With that, I poured the entire flask of spring water brew into the soil, leaving not a single drop. "Tomorrow is your execution. This is an early offering to you." Turning to leave, I paid no heed to Gu Fufeng's frantic curses echoing behind me. I never looked back. He was a wolf from Zhongshan. Once he gained power, he grew wildly arrogant. Fortunately, I have now escaped the wolf's jaws. There must be blessings to come. The end.